Hello friends, welcome to EPZ Pathsala. Today we are going to discuss open education and OER. This presentation is part of your paper Media and Globalization. In the last 4 lectures in this series, we discussed how globalization and technology are complementary to each other, each feeding to the spread of the other. We also discussed the relationship between technology and pedagogy, didactics, and cross-cultural learning. Based on these, we explained how does learning take place in a networked society vis-a-vis social media. The developments in cross-border educational delivery and other imperatives have led to significant growth in online learning and massive open online courses called MOOCs. While discussing this, we also focused on the pedagogy of MOOCs and various issues and concerns relating to this in higher education more particularly. In this last lecture of the series, we shall focus on the concept of education and open education research, especially open education and open education resources, their developments globally as well as in India, the pedagogy of OERs, and various quality guidelines for effective use of OER for teaching learning. Now, let's focus a little on openness, the concept itself. When we consider education to be open, immediately the question of accessibility comes to our mind. There have been significant movements and reforms in the past relating to hidden curriculum, how the society has been schooled, why there is a need to come out of these closed classrooms, how to democratize education and provide for equality of educational opportunities. There could be a few more. Institutionally and structurally, it is the establishment of the British Open University which implemented out-of-class open education and distance teaching learning for the first time as an open university, extending the concept of openness. The OU provided opportunity to those who couldn't afford a bounded time and space for learning through on one hand to pay for one's education. This is though different from the notion of openness understood today, because one has to pay for one's own course. Openness has been explained in 4 different aspects relating to teaching and learning. The first is open curriculum. Though the learning objectives and the expected level of content are well defined to be achieved, the stress is given on freedom of learners to choose and combine learning and learning resources, learning activities, and various educational media as per their learning styles and learning needs. Learner autonomy also requires high level of self-regulated learning. And you must appreciate self-regulated learning by reading it more. Open learning. While learners have autonomy to pursue their learning pathways, the teachers bring in new ideas and new activities to the table so that learners have the choice and the benefit of engaging in newer activities and discourses in the learning process, which of course were not included in the course design or the lesson plan earlier. So therefore, the openness comes up in the process. Open assessment. Traditionally, learning assessment has largely been summative and conducted by the institution or the testing agency, or for that matter, the accrediting agency. In case of open education, the largely formative assessment is carried out by the teachers and peers continuously during the process of learning. This could be concerning the assessment of learning or maybe the assessment for learning. And finally, the open platform. In case of technology-enabled learning and or what you may call it online learning, the platform used comprises of open standard and cloud-based formats, whereby teachers and learners can engage with freedom, with open ideas, open pathways, as interactive learning communities, and with user-friendly and reflective user interfaces. Multi-platform sources, reusable learning objects, and open education resources, OERs, can be freely used to enrich learning and to achieve higher order learning in the learning community. Besides the open university, open software and or it could be called free software also contributed to openness. Initiated by Richard Stallman at the MIT in the 1980s, the movement started to make open the code of computer software so that users can use and modify the program as they deem fit. The openness included the freedom to run, change, redistribute, and redistribute the modified version of the program. Stallman's free software movement and his 1985 Free Software Foundation, FSF, led to copyleft approach as against the copyright approach. This also led to open source software movement started by Eric Raymond in 2001, which advocated making the code of software open so that a community of developers can join together to develop it. While free software contributed to making it free, open source contributed to refinement of the program or the software itself. One is concerned with efficiency and reducing cost, like also for instance learning objects, and the other is a social movement to make it free of cost. Besides free software and open source software movements, the open content licenses developed by David Wiley in 2008, in consultation of course with both Stallman and Raymond, also contributed to open education movement. The establishment of the Open Publication License, OPL, ensured that the author's permission is needed to distribute the modified version of his or her work you can't do without the permission, and also that the printed book cannot be distributed for commercial purposes. Both FSF and OPL contributed or even led to the development in 2002 of Creative Commons by Larry Leising and colleagues. Leising and the colleagues both introduced CC BY and CC&C, furthered the cause of open education. Though again technological, another development which contributed to openness is in education was Web 2.0, coined by Tim O'Reilly in 2005. Concerned by the simple use by users as linear, O'Reilly developed Web 2.0 principles, which would facilitate both users and developers to do a whole lot of things with the internet for more decentralization, independence, collaboration, and engagement. The linear model transformed to collaborative model. Wikipedia, YouTube, Flickr, they all facilitated collaborative content development and use, while subsequent development in social networking media, like for instance Twitter and Facebook, accelerated this. So then people could freely create blogs, upload YouTube videos, create a Facebook account, and so on. Also, it contributed to the notion that whatever available on the web is or needs to be accessible free to all. The open education promotes learner-centered learning and innovations in higher education. There is a limit to openness. Martin Weller in 2014 categorically notes, the open approach is becoming a virus and may be professionally intimidating. For instance, once a paper is published under the open access license, it spreads like a virus. Further, various social media provide incentives to the author to promote the paper, and this in turn positively influences the review of the paper, its indexing, and citations. This puts scholarly publishing in copyrighted print journal in its own place, that is tight and silent. This is just one example how openness has its own hazards. May not so good OERs and Moksha blogging, Facebooking, and Twittering to promote open license and promote their stuff. Open educational resources. Now, a little bit more about OER. It's UNESCO which coined the term OER in 2002 and underlined that these are ICT-enabled open provision for educational resources which are used for all purposes but non-commercial by a community of users. Today they are digitized and are available free, though this openness and freedom need to be read in relation to the Creative Commons licensing besides others. OERs may include all kinds of content in any form, courseware, reference collections, learning objects, all kinds of learning and development softwares, content management systems, development tools like Connexions, social software like wikis, LMS like Moodle, and intellectual property licensing, which can promote open publishing. Web-based open publishing has led such practices to serious competition with established scholarly publishers today. And this is what the publishers are competing with very seriously. Concerned that such resources should not be misused, the Open Knowledge Foundation, OKF, underlined that a resource is open as long as it is used, reused, and redistributed for free, provided that there is an attribution and share alike. The 4 R's suggested by David Wiley are prominently prevail today: reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute. Historically speaking, starting from the olden days of program learning, learning resources have played an important role in teaching learning, both within as well as outside the classroom. Resources are used to stimulate student perception and attention and to facilitate learning. This can be print, audio, video, multimedia, and web-based hyperlinked resources. In case of teacher-centered learning, lectures were considered in an important resource. With the move of learner-centered learning, technology-enabled and technology-based digital resources are playing a very critical role in enhancing critical and reflective learning and what could be called as a constructivist learning. Digital learning resources are both an artifact as well as a semiotic tool. The historical developments show development of visual instruction in 19th century, television and programmed instruction in the 1950s, mainframe computer in the 1960s, desktop computer in 1980s. Learning objects and reusable learning objects are being used extensively today. though their development was much before than the emergence of the WWW, the World Wide Web. Such resources can be repeatedly used for teaching learning without losing their value. The historical developments in OER can be briefly summarized year-wise as I would speak out. For instance, in 1994, the term learning object was coined. In 1998, the term open content initiative was started. In 2001, open access initiative started, like Wikipedia, Creative Commons, MIT courseware. In 2002, the term open education resource was coined by the UNESCO. In 2006, the British Open University initiated what is called Open Learn. And the Cape Town, South African Declaration on OER was done in 2007. A year after, in 2008, the Open Courseware Consortium was established. And finally, in 2012, the Paris OER Declaration took place. The Paris OER Declaration was adopted as the World OER Congress, which was jointly organized by the Commonwealth of Learning and UNESCO and funded by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation during June 20 to 22, 2012, which called for the governments to provide public funded educational resources free through open licensing. The declaration defined OER, I quote, as teaching, learning, and research materials in any medium, digital or otherwise, that provide in the public domain or have been released under an open license that permits no cost access, use, adaptation, or redistribution by others with or limited restrictions, unquote. Based on the scale of operation, large as well as small, and provider, for instance, institution and the community, the OECD in 2007 categorized OER into 4 groups. Large institution, MIT, OCW, Open Learn. Small institution, Paris Tech, University of Western Cape. Large community, Wikipedia, Connections, Merlot, Ariande. Small community, Common Content, Open Course. Today, the large OER initiatives include the MIT OCW, the Merlot, MERLOT, the China Open Resources for Education Core, the Japanese Open Courseware Consortium, the Paris Tech OCW, the Open Learn of British Open University, which combines the learning space as well as the lab space, AECRNet of Australia, Moril, a 9-country European initiative, Merlot, I must say, the multimedia educational resource for learning and online teaching, www.merlot.org, is one of the most important and widely used OER initiatives, which was started in 1997 when for the first time the California State University initiated with free access to Merlot, MERLOT. Educational standards and peer review processes are in place, handled by a team of editors, associate editors, and peer reviewers. The materials are authentic and discipline-specific, with a content builder, web pages, and bookmarks. The OERs today comprise something like 40,000 materials in 19 different categories of material types. The technology services provided by it include Merlot web services, integration with LMS, including Blackboard and Moodle, and metadata-based import. Further to this, the International Institute of Education Planning, IIEP of UNESCO, also maintains and useful OER resources through its own wiki, IIEP Wiki. Among all of these, Wikipedia, of course, is the largest. Let's talk about OER initiatives in India. The Government of India formulated a national ICT policy in the form of mission called NME-ICT, National Mission for Education through Information and Communications Technology in 2008, to facilitate spread and use of ICT and technology-enabled or technology-based resources for education and training. NME-ICT funded a large number of projects, including NPTEL, National Program on Technology-Enabled Learning for Engineering and Technology Education. The other initiatives of OER could be that National Science Digital Library, Project Ekalavya, Project Oscar, the Sakshat project, which got initiated with the National Open University, Agropedia, NROER of NCRT, Easy Pathsala of UGC that you see now, the Sodh Sindhu, Spoken Tutorial, Virtual Labs, E-Yantra. The earliest initiative was the E-Gyan course of National Open University, IGNOU, which provided print, audio, video, course-related programs free in digital form. All of these initiatives have now merged with the National Single Window Repository of SWAYAM, which could be study webs of active learning for young aspiring minds, dedicated to the nation on July 9, 2017 by the Honorable President of India. A few universities have also formulated their OER policies, though a national policy on OER is still awaited. Let's talk about OER pedagogies. Though some would consider OERs and MOOCs as the same, or that the latter is part of the former, there are distinctions between the two. One has to examine that simple use of open education resource doesn't create a MOOC, nor a MOOC after completion of the course and becoming part of the course archive doesn't become OER. However, the pedagogic principles remain largely overarching for both. The pedagogic principles of OER may consider some of these that I would discuss now. A combination of technology tools and resources doesn't make a good OER. Rather, one has to consider appropriate and tested online learning pedagogies for the purpose. One consideration could be that comes to mind is TPAC, and which is widely used internationally, technology, pedagogy, pedagogical content knowledge. However, the traditional classroom didactic pedagogy is least suitable for open education resources. Openness is crucial to OERs, therefore, one should try to be as open as possible in charting perspectives and pathways in the design of content as well as in facilitating access to open education resources to a large number of students. The content under Creative Commons should be largely used with appropriate hyperlinks to a variety of resources. Engagement in learning, of course, is the best part of learning design. So therefore, the student collaboration among themselves and engagement in authentic tasks are crucial to critical and reflective learning. Simply teachers' critical arguments within the content is going to help much. For engagement, one may use blogs, wikis, charts, discussion forums, online group projects, maybe portfolios and for e-portfolios. Martin Weller talks of classroom education dealing with pedagogy of scarcity, that is, information and knowledge being scarce and available with the professor only. Whereas, due to information explosion today, there is pedagogy of abundance. Further, one should also talk of the pedagogy of openness. In an open pedagogy, the use of open content, including OERs, coupled with connections in the learning networks based on connectivism, ensure more connection, more engagement, more independence, more collaboration, more reflection, and therefore effective learning. Now let us talk about the quality guidelines of OER. In the process of developing OER, the TIPS framework that the Commonwealth of Learning developed and written by Paul Kavas in 2013, who reviewed various research-based frameworks and provided a list of 18 criteria under 4 heads, TIPS, for quality assurance of OER. Teaching and learning process, T, study guide with advanced organizer, learner-centered approach, authentic pedagogy, contextual needs, readability, feedback mechanism. Information and material content, I. Should be up-to-date and accurate knowledge and skills. There should be relevant and appropriate content. Must be authentic and consistent content. And there must be links to other resources. Presentation, product and format, P. Open license should be visible, easy to access and engaging, clear, concise, coherent presentation, and there must be use of open formats for reuse and remix, hierarchy of learning pathways. And finally, system, technical and technology, S. There must be use of metadata tags for locating, metadata tags for study duration and level of difficulty, and easily portable, and it must be transmissible. For enhancing the quality assurance, adoption and adaptation of OER in both face-to-face and open distance learning contexts, the approaches have been used by Commonwealth of Learning and other international agencies would be very useful. First, the OER policy. It is important that both national and institutional policies and OER are developed for effective development and use of OER by faculty and especially the students. UNESCO, COL, OECD, they have been facilitating governments to develop OER policies. This also includes giving credits to creation of OERs in the faculty promotion and tenure. In India, the development of OERs and creation of MOOCs have not been given significant prominence in the API of UGC. This must be considered very seriously if these have to be promoted further. Second is capacity building. Both policy and capacity building are complementary to each other. Without the one, the other becomes meaningless. Both international and local expertise are needed to develop skills in OER. Those engaged in open and distance teaching learning have been developing various audiovisual teaching learning resources for learners, and it becomes economical and pedagogically facilitating if they receive further training on development of OERs. 3. Technology. ICT plays an important role in the use of OERs. Therefore, ICT integration into teaching learning is very crucial. For development of courses. All these three lead to actual creation of courses based on OERs. Institutions can use appropriate OERs as complementary or blended, or use OERs exclusively for course design, development and delivery. Now, a little critique of OER. Vis-a-vis WTO GATS, it's being debated if at all the overseas providers, public as well as private, be provided with public funds in any means relating to land, infrastructure, subsidy, tax exemption, etc. Also, the question arises, how are these institutions going to be regulated, and what will happen to access and equity issues, especially in relation to the disadvantaged students and disadvantaged sections of the community? Will the OER movement facilitate in any way the access and quality provisions for both domestic as well as overseas providers? So friends, in this lecture we discussed the concept of openness and open education movement, leading to further openness through the open education resources. The developments in India were outlined briefly, as also a brief discussion on open pedagogies and mechanisms to be adopted for quality assurance of open education resources. I hope that you enjoyed the lecture. For more details, please read the e-text of this lecture properly and also attempt the questions given at the end. Thank you very much indeed.